Dude, I'm so fired up. I just recorded this whole video and I was crushing it. I recorded this whole video explaining Fan 5 and blah, blah, blah. Finished it and now I can't speak English. I'm realizing that I didn't even record the audio. So the whole video was pointless and I wasn't sharing my screen. So hopefully I'm doing this right. Um, you should be looking at my Fantastic Five right now. And my goal is I'm going to try to do this every Monday. I know it's Tuesday. Because this really is a really good resource to use at home. And hopefully your kids have come home and told you a little bit about Fam 5. Honestly, it's my favorite thing that we do in math. And it's probably the most important thing also because it's a really good resource for us to use or to do some spiral review. It also gives me the ability to pre-teach some things. Like they're going to get things in Fan 5 that, and normal fourth graders won't see maybe until December or January. We're going to see it much earlier just to kind of give us a little extra practice. And by the time we get to it, we should be pretty skilled in it. But I also use it to cover things that we have going on in class that week. Like this is a good example of it. Because in math this week, we're doing factors, multiples, prime and composite numbers. So we're kind of hitting that in Fam 5 this week. And the way I do Fam 5 is, we'll get 15 minutes on Monday. The kids, they do as best they can. When they give it to me to check it, I'm going to put a score on their notebook. It's going to be 0 through 5, just depending on how many questions they got right. And I track their data individually and I track it as a class as well. So let's say your kid comes home today and they said, hey, I got a 1 in Fan 5. Well, their goal is to try to improve that number each day throughout the week. And by the time they get to Friday, my expectation would be that everybody can score pretty well on their Fan 5, which is a quiz on Fridays. I think the most important part about Fan 5 is every single day we go over it. And usually towards the beginning of the week, we could spend anywhere from 20 to maybe even 30 minutes going over it because it can get pretty detailed. And by the time the week goes on, we don't have to spend quite as much time. But I tell the kids, if you look at your score and you want it to improve, like it's not going to magically happen. You've got to ask questions if you have them. Taking notes is huge. I tell them if I write it on the board, you should probably put it in your notebook because I'll let them use their notes throughout the week. And just paying attention. The questions are going to be the same Monday through Friday. Obviously, the numbers are going to change, but like if you're looking up here at number one is going to be talking about multiples. And what I'm going to show you is what I showed them in class today. If they use this strategy, it can help them throughout the week. Now, like it might say which number is a multiple tomorrow so they still have to read. But if they know what multiples are and they know what factors are and they know what a prime number is, going over it and taking those notes helps a bunch. So what I'm doing is I'm going to show you what we did in class today. Hopefully nobody interrupts. Fingers are crossed that this is actually recording in the first place. And what you guys can do at home is if you want to make up your own practice questions, you could do that. Or, you can have your kiddos come home and say, hey, explain to me what a factor is or what a prime number is. Or you could even say, hey, make sure you bring home your Fam 5 notebook today so I can look at your work. That can be a good way to hold them accountable as well, because the best part about Fam 5 is if you want to improve, you can. You get what you give. If you're giving your full attention and effort, that score can go up. And I tell them, I don't care if you get a 2. If you got a 1 yesterday and a 2 today, you went up. That was the goal. And I think the best part is keeping the data as a class. We get to see every day, hey, our class went up. We're doing what we're supposed to do. Or, hey, our class went down. That should never happen after seeing a question the second time. So there's a lot of data involved. But I'm going to step over to the whiteboard and hopefully you can hear me just as clear. I'm going to go through these a lot quicker than I went through with them. And if you have any questions on any of these individually, obviously reach out and I'll be happy to help. All right, so for number 1, it says, which of the following numbers is not a multiple of 6? And I told them, I said, when I think of multiple, I just think of multiply. And if we're going to find the multiples of 6, our life gets so much easier if we know our multiplication facts. Because if we're listing multiples, we would start with 6 times 1, 6 times 2, 6 times 3, and so on. And we got to kind of look at our answer choices because I don't have to list 50 multiples. If I'm looking at my answer choices, like 60 is the biggest number. In reality, if I did have to list all these multiples, I would stop once I got there. But when I list my multiples, I got 6 times 1 is 6. That's my first multiple. 6 times 2 would give me 12. That's my second multiple. 6 times 3 would give me 18. Now, if they're using their answer choices and thinking logically, they just found the answer. Because if we're talking not a multiple of 6, I skipped right over 16, meaning there is not something I can multiply 6 by to get me 16. I just proved that I could do 6 times 3. And if they know their facts, they can say, hey, I know B is not the answer because I can do 6 times 6. Same thing for D. I know 6 times 10 is going to give me 60. So if you know your multiplication facts, you can either eliminate answer choices as you go or just list your multiples and see which one you don't land on. So they actually did, now I'm recording this during my planning, so I've only done my homeroom, but we went 17 out of 22 on this one. That's a good sign, but I know it can go up. I think the thing that's going to trick some of them later in the week, I am going to change that wording. They've got to make sure they're reading. And I noticed that a ton. Like we'll do really good math and make reading mistakes. Those are tough to fix. But they did really well on that one today. All right, number 2. Where's my mouse? All right, for number 2, it says, which of the following numbers is not a factor of 28? This is actually what we spent our math lesson doing today, talking about factors. You know, a factor is any number that you're using to multiply to get a product. So again, 2 different ways you could have done this. You could have looked at your answer choices and you could have listed out your multiples. Or if you know your facts, this is so much easier. Like you could sit here and say, man, 2 times something to get 28. One thing I told him today, if this number is even, 2 is always going to be a factor. So you really didn't even need to figure out 2 times whatever it is to get 28. You could have just said, oh, I know it's a factor because my product's even. But if you listed your multiples, you would have seen, 2 times 14 gives me 28. So 2 is a factor. Same thing for B. If you don't know 4 times something to get 28, you could have listed your multiples. And that's going to take you a little bit of time. That's why I would much rather them have them memorized. But if you know your facts, 4 times 7 is 28. So 4 is a factor, which automatically means 7 is a factor because 7 times 4 is going to give you 28. And that just leaves them with D. And again, you can prove this. So it's almost impossible to miss. You can list your multiples of 12. 12 times 1, 12 times 2, 12 times 3. And you can stop right there because you don't land on 28. You skip right over it, which means you cannot multiply 12 times anything to get 28. Something that they're going to hear me say a million times this year is that multiplication makes your life easier. If they know their facts, they can knock that one out really quick. Again, I could change that not at any point. They went 14 out of 22 on that one. Number 3 was our second lowest. We just didn't read on this one. It says Cam has 4 trophies. Andrew has 3 times as many trophies as Cam. How many trophies do they have combined? So look, some people saw combined and they instantly just said, hey, let me do 4 plus 3, and they got 7. So they chose A. Some people made up their own question to answer. Like they did the right math and they didn't read. So I told them anytime I'm dealing with more than one person or thing or animal or whatever it is, I love drawing a chart. And I know I got Cam over here. I've got Andrew over here. The only person I know for sure how many trophies they have right now is Cam, because it tells me Cam has 4. So I set it up like this. And then for Andrews, it says he has 3 times as many trophies as Cam. As soon as I see 3 times, I just instantly write that. Well, if he's got 3 times as many as Cam, and I know Cam's got 4, then I know I got to multiply 3 times that 4, which would give me 12. That's the answer I saw the most. That means they did awesome math. They did what they were supposed to do, but then they made up their own question. It doesn't say how many trophies does Andrew have. It says how many do they have combined. That's where I would have taken Cam's 4, Andrew's 12, and I would have gotten 16. So keywords are super, super important. And I'm noticing a trend as I'm going over these. We had a lot of reading mistakes today, a lot of things that to me are easy to fix. They just got to slow down and read. All right, number 4 was the lowest. and it was supposed to be. This is an example of pre-teaching in Fam 5. We are going to end up learning about prime numbers this week, I think. I didn't expect them to know what it was. Some people did, which was great. And I actually gave them the definition to write down in their notebook. When we're talking about prime numbers, a prime number only has two factors, meaning only two numbers you can multiply to get that product. And the factors are always going to be 1 and the number itself. For an example, I know 8 is not a prime number because I can do 8 times 1 and 4 times 2. That right there is 4 factors. To be prime, you got to have 2. I can say the same for 15. I can do 1 times 15 and 5 times 3. That's got more than 2 factors. 11 is prime because all I can do is 11 times 1 to get 11. And the same thing with 12. I can eliminate that because I can do 12 times 1, 2 times 6, 3 times 4. I don't know what I just wrote. So those are not prime. Those are composite numbers, which I didn't tell them about composite today. We'll end up getting to it. But a prime number's just got 2 factors. For number 4, if they know their facts, they're going to get that one right every day. I told them that one's going to go up a ton because it was 7 out of 22 today. We'll probably double that tomorrow, if not more than that. All right. So now we know what a prime number is. Now, number 5, I was kind of surprised that we didn't have everybody get this question correct. I did tell them one of my biggest pet peeves. I had a couple students who added it just like this. They did 5 plus 3, 3 plus 4, 5 plus 3. And I'm not saying that's impossible, but guys, I'm talking to you like I'm talking to my students. We've got to stack these numbers up, and we've got to make sure the place values all lined up. Because when you start regrouping, it's really hard to do this if they're not stacked on top of each other. And look, they went 18 out of 22 on this one, which is our highest. But this one to me was the least challenging that this question will be all week. The numbers are going to be this big, but I'm going to start tossing in some regrouping to where we're really going to have to be able to do this. But we just did 5 plus 3 was 8, 4 plus 3 was 7, 5 plus 3 was 8, 4 plus 3 was 7, 3 plus 2 was 5. Now, what I told them today was they didn't have answer choices. If it were me, I would have either done this addition twice, meaning I would have stacked it back up and done it again, or you can always check your addition with subtraction. I would have taken my sum, 57,878, and I would have taken away one of the other numbers to see what I was left with. Because if you're getting different numbers, you knew you made a mistake and you could have done it again. Because I noticed the mistakes on that one. There weren't many, but they were silly mistakes. We can do that addition, even though those numbers are pretty big. All right. I just absolutely flew through that. I hope it helps. There's going to be weeks when you see Fan 5 and you're going to be like, is this dude for real? Because I really do try to challenge them. But the whole point being, we're going to work really, really hard in class. By the time we get to the end of the year, whether you believe it right now or not, your kids are going to be fired up for the EOG. Like, we love the EOG. And they're just going to be prepared. Fan 5 is a big part of that. If you have questions, please let me know. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how they do on Friday. They've been working really hard so far. So fingers crossed we keep it going. Thanks, y'all.